we start AEW's program. You know, I'd said last week I'd put a tribute to Jay and an explanation and then put Mark and Jay on first while they had the biggest audience they were going to have. And I thought that would hook a lot of these fence sitters that just tune out after the Big Bang Theory to maybe see what else was going on. They countered instead with, let's send Jericho out there so that he can get some glory, him and Sammy and Danny Garcia. And did you see what Jericho and Garcia had the rip-off male stripper pants, and when they ripped them off and threw them up in the air, Jericho's fell back down over his fucking head? Or were you watching Jericho's pants that close?
I wasn't watching his pants closely, but I did see the spot.
Yes. So it was Jericho and Sammy against Action Andretti and Ricky Starks. And I've got, again, I'm not going to be too hard-hearted, but I got to point out what I see. Most everybody involved in this was over to some degree with the people, and the action was good, especially when Andretti was working with Sammy. But as a tag team match, this was a goddamn mess, and I'll explain why in a second. But and let me say good things about Action Andretti. He's in great shape. He's a talented athlete. He does great moves, and he's also got some of the basics down. Very athletic again, unfortunately small, but he's a great underdog white meat babyface. Not somebody that can be a main event guy right now because you're trying. This is the kind of guy that you bring in and you let him start looking good and get over organically with the people because they really like him and he's snazzy. And you slowly move him up because, again, he's green and he hasn't done a lot of talking on television, and that shows. And also he's a little fella. So, you know, instead of having a big-time superstar, Chris Jericho, put him over and then featuring him every week and in a top spot right off the bat, throw him in the deep end, and he's going to come and go like a lot of these guys have come and gone. They've tried to do the same thing, too. Have you seen where Wheeler Yuta's at these days? We'll talk about him in a minute. But this guy, if you just let it happen and start bringing him along, do no harm. Use the Hippocratic Oath on a guy like this. Don't book him to look like shit. Let him win some, lose when appropriate, and get over with the people and slowly move him up. A guy that could be a main eventer now would have been if Ricky Starks went out there after he did a high-profile job for MJF and beat Chris Jericho flat in the middle. Now, that would have been interesting because he's already... Nevertheless.
Well, if I could just say, though, I think part of the problem with Andretti, and, you know, people like him, but there were a lot of quiet spots when he was the one doing the offense in the match, because people still don't know him. And
well, yes, they're not familiar, and unless he's beating up, because Sammy's kind of familiarity breeds contempt these days. When Action is beating up Jericho and it's unexpected, that gets a big pop. When that's the thing, when Sammy and Action did the first 5 minutes of this match without tagging either partner in, and it was, you know, not only was it kind of starting to get the same thing after a while, but I can see any fan from 10 years ago, and to be honest, the crowd was all over a lot of shit later on in the program. They were more quiet in a lot of places for this. This isn't. Lexington wasn't trained on acrobatic wrestling, and any fan from 10 or 15 years ago that might tune in the program or be sitting in the stands is like, what is this, kids wrestling?
Well, the other thing I was going to say, though, Action Andretti, who, by the way, looks like the illegitimate son of Jimmy Del Rey. Next time you see him, you'll see it. But Action Andretti, he beat Jericho. He got that surprise win after what was a long, I think it went through the commercial, what was a long match, got the win. And then everything shifted almost right away to Jericho and Ricky Starks. Jericho's feuding with Ricky Starks and technically Action Andretti, who have to wrestle his other guys just because they're both feuding with Jericho. I think that hurt Action Andretti. It wasn't okay, let's put him with Ricky Starks, who is really over and could be super over if we did the right thing with him next. Putting him with Ricky Starks didn't help Ricky Starks. I don't think it helped Action Andretti. I think he kind of needed to be on his own, establishing himself. He kind of got lost in the shuffle almost a week after he won his match.
Well, remember, the week after he won his match is when he came out and basically Starks was put in the little buddy role because they knew that was going to happen. So okay, let's let Action come out and kick the shit out of all the heels. But then he came out and saved Starks' ass and made Starks look like shit. So they're trying to shoehorn shit together. It doesn't necessarily need to go together this quick.
It would have been like if the 1, 2, 3 kids started teaming with Hulk Hogan the next week, you know?
Yes. I'm surprised Hogan missed that. Waltman was very popular.
Well, he left right after that, to be fair.
That's true.
He left right away, yeah.
But basically, so Action and Sammy did the first 5 minutes themselves, and then they both just cold tagged basically Starks and Jericho in with each other. With no milk, they just, boom, tag. No, like, you want him. So then they have the face off, and then they get in a big fight, Jericho and Starks. And then Starks grabs his hand and does the top rope strut walk, where he's holding Jericho's hand and he's strutting on the top rope. But he doesn't see that Sammy, 10 feet in front of him, is climbing to the top rope and fucking cutters him off the top. So they're stopping the babyface because the babyface is a dumb fuck and presented as not keeping his eye on what's going on, rather than he's the victim of a heelish double team from behind. So again, you got first 5 minutes, no tags. Then babyface gets a hot tag, makes a bit of a comeback, and through his own stupidity and not cunning on the part of the heels is cut off. Then they get heat on Starks. And I will say one thing critical, but Ricky Starks takes a slam like a sack of wheat because they did 2 or 3 body slams. Jesus, Ricky, arch your back, look up. But anyway, before Jericho was in, the match was moving. But when Jericho gets in, they start the heat on Starks. It kind of bogged down. Well, then, like I said, it was awkward. They started out with no tags. Then they finish up with tag. Tagged Action Andretti. He makes a comeback, dives on both of them. Starks DDTs Sammy. Action hits a crossbody, 2 count. Then Action and Sammy have a double knockout, and they reach over and simultaneous tags again to fucking Jericho and Starks. And Jericho ducks clothesline, bonks Action off the apron because they bobbled a little bit there. And then they do the running spot, and Starks spears Jericho. Starks power bombs Jericho, 2 count. Then Starks reaches over and tags Action back in. And if you're in a tag team match and you've resorted to where after the comeback you're tagging 2 and 3 more times, you're getting too complicated. So Action misses a moonsault, and Jericho tags Sammy back in. And that's why I wrote, I'm lost. They're back and forth. Everybody's doing good stuff, but as a tag team match, this thing's a fucking mess. So then Starks gives Jericho his finisher on the floor, and Andretti was about to beat Sammy in the ring, but Danny Garcia hit Action Andretti with the bat in the head. He hit him in the head with a baseball bat. Kid's 5'6", 160, and being hit in the head with a baseball bat staggered him backwards into Guevara's finish. 1, 2, 3. Jesus H. Christ. Your thoughts?
I mean, it was all right. I'm not going to rip on anything. It was all right. I think they bungled a lot of stuff with the booking, as I expected with Ricky Starks, but I think, again, other than the fact that he's on the show, you wouldn't think that Action Andretti's a guy who got a big surprise victory, a month and a half ago? He's just another guy doing the moves on the show already, teaming with Ricky Starks, who, again, was super over. He got himself super over, and now he's caught in this web of Jericho. We'll see.
The web of Jericho.
That's what it is. He's feuding with both guys. It just so happens they have to wrestle the Sammys and the Garcias and the 2.0s and the Hagers, who are doing nothing on this show but hanging out with each other while Jericho feuds with everyone. It's ridiculous, but yeah, I mean, it was an all right match. The crowd was part of the story. They kind of, and again, I didn't even think about the idea that maybe not every crowd is the universal wrestling crowd. Maybe some crowds still, like you said, they're not used to the acrobatics and just popping for each individual. Hey, I'm up here now, and now I'm back down.
Yeah,
so
well,
maybe
when you think of AEW's never been to Lexington. That was they've never been to the state of Kentucky live. Again, there were no big events in Lexington and Louisville from the WWE for years because of the no blood rule with the commission. OVW and, the Jarrett territory, they certainly didn't feature that kind of wrestling. So it's still a little new, and they obviously got into it by the end of the program, especially with the Briscoe and Lethal match. So they appreciated violence. Maybe it was just these individuals that they weren't necessarily wrapped up in.